around 10 years old, we had a big family reunion. Grandparents, aunts and uncles, cousins, second cousins. It had been planned for ages. We came from all parts of America, from New York and Florida, from Ohio and Maine. It took us hours and days to travel there. It took us a 10-hour drive. There were 3 days worth of activities planned, and on the first night, we all gathered together at a park near a lake. We played baseball, we had a barbecue, and we got to know each other. But then that night, many of us realized that there had been an uninvited guest to the barbecue, namely food poisoning. You don't need to know the details, just suffice it to say that lots of us were very ill and couldn't leave our hotel rooms. All the activities of the family reunion were canceled, then we all went home. The celebration we had been longing to go to for so long was just finished. We were so disappointed. Today feels strange, doesn't it? We are celebrating Easter, the fact that Christ is alive, but we don't celebrate together. Like my family reunion, we are all still a family, we're still connected, but we're not able to celebrate together this year face to face. I think the first Easter was probably more like this one that we're having in 2020 than like the ones we're used to having, with the big gatherings and the celebrations together. On Good Friday, after Jesus died on the cross, the disciples, they went home. It says in John 20 that they were at home with the doors locked because they were afraid. And of course they were. Jesus had been killed on the cross, and there was a very real threat to their lives as well. They didn't know yet that Jesus was alive, that he had the victory over death. They were sad, they were scared, they were hiding. A lot of that feels familiar to how we are celebrating this year, but also to how many followers of Jesus throughout the years around the world have experienced Easter Sundays. On that first Easter, though, they weren't all indoors and hiding. In Luke chapter 24, it says that the women took the spices they prepared and went to the tomb. They had a task to do, to anoint Jesus' body for burial, because they hadn't had a chance to do it before. Were they scared? I have to imagine that they were. In Matthew chapter 27, it says that Pilate put a Roman guard at the tomb. Mary and the other women were going out at their own risk to do a job that had to be done. That sounds familiar to today too. Some of us are staying at home, but others have jobs to do that they go and do at their own risks. When they got to the garden, they saw the stone had been rolled away from the tomb and the body was gone, and the women started to cry. They were so sad that Jesus had died. They were traumatized because they had seen it, and they were worried for the future. What they didn't realize was that Jesus was right there. And their grief and their fear and their worries, Jesus was right there next to them. And the unpleasant tasks that they had to do, Jesus was there with a victory over death. And then Jesus appeared in the house where the other disciples were hiding. He even came back again because Thomas had missed it, couldn't believe it because he hadn't seen it. Jesus was there. He came to them where they were. Of course he did. The angels had said in Matthew 1, quoting Isaiah 7:14, his name is Emmanuel. God is with us. In John 16:30, Jesus said, "You will grieve, but your grief will turn to joy." That joy did come on Easter Sunday when he rose again, and they saw him. Jesus is alive. But then he ascended into heaven, and they were still on earth. We read in the book of Acts that the disciples did amazing things with courage and with love, healing and teaching, and people being added to the numbers of believers every day. They were given the Holy Spirit, which we also have, which teaches and comforts us, gives us courage, and helps us to be the people that we want to be. But they didn't have Jesus walking the earth with them every day anymore. Did they miss him? Did they mourn him? Their grief did turn to joy because Jesus rose again and ascended to heaven and was truly the Son of God. But like us, As the disciples' years went on earth, they worried, they suffered, they mourned, and they died. While they were on earth, they grieved. But then, their grief did turn to joy, because just as Jesus died and rose again and ascended to heaven, they joined him in heaven, where there was no more hunger or thirst because they drank from the living water, where there was no more night because God was their light, where there were no more tears because God wiped them away, where they stood with Jesus in victory and were given a crown to wear, but instead they threw it down before him, worshiping, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lamb upon the throne." While the disciples walked the earth, they grieved, but their grief turned to joy when they joined Jesus in his heavenly kingdom. And one day, so will we. Our Easter Sundays here on earth together are wonderful. God's people gathered, singing and praying together, eating together, marveling at good things like flowers and chocolates. They're a glimpse of heaven. And we're missing that glimpse this year, which makes me long for heaven all the more, when that glimpse will be a full view of God's glory and celebration and love. Easter is actually a celebration of what is past, that morning 2,000 years ago when Jesus rose again and conquered the grave. But no one knew it yet. Easter is also a celebration of what's to come for all of us. It's a glimpse of heaven when we're going to be with God forever. But we live here now, in the in-between, in the waiting. He is with us in everything we do and face, whether that's at home like the disciples, or doing jobs that we have to do like the women at the tomb. Yet we long to be with him in heaven. Easter gives us the promise that we're going to join him one day. And right now, although we don't have the congregation together to shout it all out loud, but in our homes, in our quiet places, yes, in our worries, in our doubts, and our fears, we can whisper to ourselves, Christ is risen. He is risen indeed.